Okay, shirts on. So in terms of the cow story, I wanted to elaborate on just how much I love cows. Have you looked into the eyes of a cow? There's a soul there, you know. So, and they are the most gentle creatures. They're big, but they're gentle if you walk past them. But I mean, I was worried if I go into my love for cows too much, you know, appetites might be spoiled. You might look at your meal a bit differently today. So I'll stop right there. So if we think about it, I'm going to walk around a bit, guys, and for two reasons. I think better when I'm walking. And the other reason is I'm going to take this co-create story a bit further. If I tap you on the shoulder, you're going to finish my slide deck. Okay, so we're going to do like a bit of a race. If you see me come close, be afraid, be very afraid. Right, so the world of wellness, I think we can all agree, is very confusing. And it's no wonder. In the US, they did a study recently, and they found that 60% of people actually felt so overwhelmed by the conflicting messages out there. And 40% said they changed their behavior only to find out later that it was actually wrong. And I think many of us can attest to the same type of experience. And it's no wonder, if you look at some of these publications, and these are not years apart, these are literally weeks or months apart from one another. A study shows that weight training is better than cardio for fat loss. But no, weight training is not better for cardio than fat, but that one didn't show. Oh, well, anyways, the other one said that actually weight training is better than cardio. You've heard that more recently as well. There's a study that says, don't drink coffee when you wake up. It's going to increase your cortisol levels. Another study that says, but do drink coffee. It's good for cardiac health. It's good to actually prep you for your next workout. Then intermittent fasting, the flavor of the decade, I suppose. Good for you, anti-inflammatory. Then this study comes out and it says it can actually lead to cardiovascular death. Then the big one, what diet is the best diet to follow? Do we follow a Mediterranean diet, so the fish and the olives and the vegetables, or do we go ketogenic? And then just to make things a bit more interesting, I want to actually introduce a few additional, actually just two terms, which you may or may not be familiar with. And the first one is biohacking. Now we all think, like a lot of things in our lives and in this era, that is something new and novel, but it was actually already coined in 1992. And if you look at the traditional or the Webster, Merriam-Webster type of definition, it says it's a biological experimentation by individuals outside a traditional scientific or medical research environment. And the aim is basically to improve the quality or capabilities of organisms. If we take that down and we make it a bit more understandable, it basically means you self-experiment, so there's certain inputs because you want to optimize the output. Now, unfortunately, a lot of my slides are not showing as it should. I don't know what's going on. There was supposed to be a picture on this side with multiple superheroes. So I'm going to ask you to co-create the slide with me in your mind. On this side, you will see Iron Man, you will see Superwoman, you will see Catwoman, you will see Spider-Man. So all of our action heroes in some way or form have actually biohacked. Whether it was radioactive exposure, whether it was some kind of a poison that they ingested, or a traditional herb, they used that to give themselves superhuman strength. And all of you, whether you called it biohacking or not, you've done the same thing. So let's say you thought my IBS, so in Oldman's terms, it's called spastic colon, but we call it IBS now, irritable bowel syndrome, is caused by lactose. You thought that's the reason. So what do? You switch to almond milk, lactose-free products to see if it helps. That is biohacking, okay? Or you go to the gym, instead of doing weights only, you introduce a HEAT workout into your program to see if you get better results. That's biohacking, okay? So the other term, and I'm not going to spend, guys, can we fix my slides? Is it possible? Vicky, I don't know what's going on. Okay, all right. Maybe I can ask a question to the audience. Any of you, while they fix my slides, now we can really make it interactive. Have any one of you actually had a similar experience to the US environment, where you've actually tried a biohacking or some kind of an intervention, and you thought this was the truth, only to find out, oh my hat, this is actually bad. Do you want to share? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and where do you stop? Where do you start? You know, yeah. Anybody else? Any interesting stories in terms of what you did or did not do? Did you sleep more? Did you sleep less? Do you sleep 7 hours? Do you sleep 9 hours? Is 10 hours too much? Is going to kill you? You know, it's I hope not. All those snoozes that you have during the weekend, you know, you're trying to catch up. And there's another interesting study about, can you actually catch up sleep? You know, and there's two schools of thought there too. You can, I agree, yeah. So and I think, as with all things in life and all things in research, you will find what you're looking for. If you look hard enough, you will find the answers in research. But we will talk about that just now. Let's see if my slides are working. Another minute. Okay, let's share some. Okay, let me share a story. Let me share my story. I'm going to get into the biohacking experiment now, but I think it might be a good time just to tell you what my experience was with a biohack. And I'm jumping the gun now, but forget that I said this and just be surprised when you see the rest of the biohacking slides. So I have an addiction, and I've had the addiction as long as we've been running Foresight. And don't squirm, it's not bad. The addiction is to sour worms. I love sour worms. You know, I will eat them until my tongue is raw. And then the problem is, because my tongue is raw, I can't feed my other addiction, which is coffee. So you can imagine that becomes a bit of a problem. So into the biohack, and our health coaches asked, or actually challenged me, see what sour worms do to your blood sugar. Challenge accepted. And what I saw, 4 sour worms, and my blood glucose went like that. And I'm usually quite level. So I can tell you in all honesty, it's been 6 months now since our biohack, and I haven't touched a sour worm. Woolies, I just walk past. So it actually, thank you, celebrate me, thank you. All right. Okay, so the slides are still not working. All right. Okay, it's not working still. I'm just going to go. So again, guys, pretend with me. So Gavin explained very nicely what a CGM monitor is, okay, and how a CGM actually works. Instead of just a snapshot in time of your sugar at that point in time, it gives you a trend, gives you every 5 minutes a reading of in some way or form. But what I wanted to show you on this picture, which I actually love, and I do hope we have an opportunity to show you that picture. Otherwise, you can come to me one by one like you were standing in the line, and I can show you the picture one by one. And it's a picture of a new Barbie that was released, I think about in the past few weeks, if you've seen it. And it's actually Barbie wearing a CGM monitor. Yes, it's amazing. And I think that's so amazing because it normalizes the wear of CGMs for young people who are often very self-conscious about it. And I think that was just really amazing. Okay. No, nothing is happening. It's broken, yeah. Okay, this looks a bit better, but I really want to show the Barbie. Did you guys also play with Barbie growing up? Yeah, I had the Barbie, the Ken, the child, the car, I had Barbie. Anyways, so let me start here. Again, so if you guys can imagine with me some of my slides. So the first question that you would like to ask maybe is, why on earth would an actuarial healthcare consulting firm actually do a biohack? You know, it sounds a bit out there. And I suppose Insight is a bit out there, so that's the answer to that question. But it's also a culture thing. we believe that it's only by experimentation that you can actually understand better and start innovating. And then obviously being an actuarial firm, data is important to us. So can we actually use data to optimize our health? Then there was self-experimentation, because just by means of what it means to biohack, you self-experiment. But we also wanted to see, apart from learning for ourselves, can we actually pass our learnings on to the bigger community and help to clear this mud, which is wellness, a little bit. So how did we do it? And I think Gavin explained that a little bit in terms of how they typically manage a biohack program for their clients. 2 weeks, CGM. First week, you just go on as you do normally. Eat what you will, drink what you will, sleep how you will, stress how you will, doesn't matter. But just see in your normal habitat how your body actually responds, with all these different inputs and stresses. Then the second week, you start making little changes, and not big changes. You might swap out your morning Kellogg's or oats. A lot of people saw what oats did to some of them. And you have an egg and an avo and see if that changes anything. And then as part of the biohack, we also had people self-report on stress and energy, their sleeping patterns, log your food, log, how you've exercised. There was support from the health coaches, so they helped us along the way. We had a wonderful WhatsApp community. So all of the biohackers, also voluntary, you didn't have to, but if you wanted to, there was a WhatsApp group created where we shared our experiences. And some were funny and some were not so funny, but still we had the opportunity to have that shared experience and the support from a community, which I think is crucially important when we embark on these type of initiatives. And then finally, at the end of this, we asked all of the participants to please provide us with qualitative feedback. Because ultimately, if you want to think about this experiment in terms of a value-based, patient-centered type of environment and research project, you have to think about how the patient reported on it and how they experienced this whole environment. So who were we? 32 inside volunteers. Some were very voluntary, some were not so voluntary. And that's about a third of the inside population. 50% were female. And I'm so happy about that. Not because I'm a feminist, I am, but not only because of that. Not because I believe women are superior. Because they are. But also because the research in general, actually, but specifically in the wellness environment and in the world of biohacking, is very scarce when it comes to women. And women, our bodies do not behave the same way that men do. I mean, that book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, that also applies in terms of how we are built and how we react. 60% reported good overall health, and 50% reported stress levels of more than 7. I'm sure if we did that poll again, the numbers will look a bit different in terms of where we are in the cycle at the moment. All right, so how did we do? So before I go into this, for the clinicians in the room, if you see the reference ranges a bit different from what you're used to in managing populations, this is because this is not about managing the risk, this is about cardiometabolic health. So it will be a bit tighter, and we can send you all the literature that corresponds with those values. So first of all, in terms of the mean blood glucose, slightly higher than what we would want it to be, but just adding that we didn't take any outliers out of these calculations. This is the full population. In terms of the mean coefficient of variance, so what that means in the world of blood glucose, it tells you to what extent your glucose fluctuates, so how much it goes up and down. And why that is important is the more your glucose levels fluctuate, the higher your risk for cardiometabolic disease. And then there's a new term that's been going around, and again, as with a lot of things in the medical field, there are people for and against it, but which they call diabetes type 3. And basically what that is the correlation between blood glucose fluctuation and cognitive decline. And also it's being linked to the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. So if none of you at this point in time were worried about blood glucose fluctuations and looking after your blood glucose, let that scare you, because all of you are very intelligent. I'm just going to leave it there. In terms of time in range, I mean, we did fairly well there. The optimal cardiometabolic range, we fell a bit short. And then the average highest blood glucose that was measured was 9.88. But now, that looks okay. But the devil is in the detail. So this is what we looked like. Say again? Oh, next slide. Thank you. Right, so if you look at individuals, this is working a little bit, not too much. Okay. If you look at the top graph, each of those letters of the alphabet shows or represents one of the biohack participants. And you can see there the pattern starts changing when you delve into individual people, which is what you would expect, because none of us are created exactly the same, and our bodies respond differently. But I want you to focus on two groups. The first one in that blue little block are what I would like to call the glucose gladiators. And those are people, you would see that the mean blood glucose was very close to that optimal range, sitting around 5.5, and they kept it very tight. So there wasn't a huge amount of fluctuation around that mean blood glucose. But then, if you look at the red pinkish group, and they were not women, that's not why it's pink and blue, it wasn't because they were men, it was just a nice color to use. Those are what I like to call the glucose rollers. So as you would think about a roller coaster, lots of ups and downs, lots of ups and downs. So big glucose variation. The interesting thing though, if you look at Biohacker H, so the one with the highest glucose variation in that turquoise green color, because women, we can tell you what a color is up to a millimeter, hey? Guys would say, look at the green color. We would go turquoise, light turquoise. Anyway, that person actually thought, despite having this high glucose variation, these fluctuations, this person actually thought they were doing well. They thought that their overall health was fantastic. Right, and I'm going to delve into this person now. Next slide, thank you. All right, so we call this person Biohacker H, known diabetic on treatment and compliant. So getting the meds, getting the prescription, going to see the GP, having the bloods done every 6 months and thinking everything was okay. Enter the biohack. And you can see that her fasting blood glucose in the mornings went up to 12, right? That is very, very, very high. In a patient with diabetes, you typically want that to be below 7 or 7.2, depending on the guideline, which guideline you follow. Evening blood glucoses went up to 18. So she did the responsible thing, or he, or they, and she took these results to her GP. She also got herself a finger prick blood glucose monitor, because as Gavin indicated, that the ones we used were not necessarily as accurate as the ones that would have been used in a diabetic population. She went to her GP with all of these results. Her medication was adjusted. She got involved, got a dietitian and a personal trainer involved. And she, in the meanwhile, she's lost 5 kgs, and her fasting blood glucose levels are now between 6 and 8. And she's still going strong. And the reason why I think this is so important and what it highlights is, if we look at how we identify our high-risk population in general, if we use only claims data, we're going to miss a large chunk of people that should have been part of that group and are not getting the attention that they should be getting. And I know it's difficult. To get clinical data is extremely difficult. The issues with the labs, issues with the doctors. But we need to try and find ways to actually start incorporating that into our risk management profiles. Next slide. The next biohacker, this guy was very interesting, or this girl. One of the lucky ones would have a sweetie or a chocolate and didn't do much to his blood levels. A little bit of a blip, but not much. Enter a stressful week at work. Tight deadlines, you all know those. You don't sleep much. you're very stressed, and suddenly his blood glucose levels started rising. And even despite the fact that he started looking at his diet, eating a bit better, trying to control things as much as he can from his side, he was unable to bring it down to previous levels. However, once the stress subsided, he had some stress management techniques that he incorporated, and with the help of our health coaches, good sleep hygienes, and things started normalizing again. So why is that important? Good for us, good for him. Why is it important? If we think about our disease management programs, I think it's important that we start thinking about that interplay between wellness and disease. It's not good enough just to develop disease management programs looking at diabetes, drinking your medicine, going to the doctor. How do we create avenues to actually integrate wellness programs into our solutions? Because the risk, you can see those are the stats up there. People who don't sleep well, and sleep is not just about quantity, it's about quality as well, have a 20 to 30% higher risk for cardiovascular disease and diabetes. Next slide. The next thing we wanted to understand is if we looked at glucose variability and some of our self-reported data, was there any kind of relationship from our experience? Remember, this is not a randomized control trial. And the first thing we did, and when I say we, I mean the lovely people that work with me that are great with numbers, so the actuaries and the data scientists, Richard and Pio, who's in Cape Town. And the first thing we did was draw up a heat map. So 2 things with a heat map that you need to know. What is the color? Is it red or blue? Red means positive correlation. Blue means negative, so different directions. And the more intense the color, the greater the correlation. All right, but that tells us there's a relationship. It doesn't tell us yet if it's true. So we did another regression analysis. And what we found was there were 2 variables that actually we could say with confidence it's a real relationship. And those are emotional eating habits and energy levels. So those individuals that reported emotional eating habits had a higher likelihood of also having a greater glucose variance. And similarly, those that reported low energy levels also had a higher likelihood of reporting a high glucose variability. And this is actually the same things. If you go and read literature around this, you will find this in literature as well. The next one, next slide. Similar story, not going to repeat that, is some of our energy levels. How was that influenced by some of the self-reported data and some of the clinical data that we captured? And once again, 2 variables that we saw where we can say with confidence there's a real relationship, and that is sleep quality and energy. So the better you sleep, the higher energy levels, and then those people that had more blood glucose spikes had a lower energy compared to the rest. Okay, so next slide. Now, like I said, we wanted to understand how the participants experienced this whole story. What were their qualitative feedback? So in words, tell us, what did you think? And these are just some of the snippets that I took from the feedback that we got. We can go to the next slide. Rude awakening, eye-opening. And then you can see the actuaries, right? Data-driven nutrition, real-time results. But the one that got me smiling every time was my curve. And the word my curve got a new meaning when we started looking at biohacking. And you would catch a biohacker a mile away because they would be standing around, drinking water and asking, what did your curve do this morning? What does your curve look like after coffee? So the most interesting conversations, I wanted to say around the water hole, but that's probably the wrong word. All right, we can go to the next slide. So I would have loved to tell you that all of this was sunshine and roses and unicorns. By the way, unicorns, you need to read up on unicorns. There's folklore around unicorns. That's not what we're seeing nowadays. So do yourself a favor and go read up about unicorns. Okay, sidetracked. On the device fatigue. Imagine you have to wear this thing on your arm for 2 weeks. Even though it's small, people, they get fatigued. It's like, I've had enough now, remove it. I don't want to see it anymore. Some experience discomfort, either because of the glue that kind of sticks the CGM to your arm. And other felt interrupted sleep, because if the CGM is on your arm and this is the arm that you sleep on and you turn around at night, you kind of feel it, or some people felt it more than others. And then obviously notifications. So you can switch the notifications off, but obviously FOMO is a real thing, so nobody actually does that. In terms of daily activities, and you would have seen this with CGM, typical marketing technique, wear a CGM, continue your life as is. It won't interfere with anything. What we found is that with contact sports, no go, doesn't work. And swimming, if you swim more than 30 minutes, it malfunctions, and then you have to recalibrate it. However, I spoke to Gavin about that earlier this week, and he said they've actually upgraded it now, and they say that you can swim for 2 hours, and it will be okay. I am willing to test that, and we'll see, Gavin, if that's actually the truth. And then very important from a mental health perspective, in everything what we do, we need to consider mental health. What is the impact on people's mental health? And here the question is, and I think we spoke about it earlier today, it was mentioned, how far do you need to peel this onion before it actually creates anxiety or it fuels obsessive-compulsive behavior, especially in the world that we live in at the moment? For me, the anxiety wasn't as much looking at my data, seeing how my body responded. It was when we took off the CGM. Because then I was like, now what now? How will I know? So another hurdle that we need to crack. Maybe that bottle as well, but The last one is financials. And that came up not only in our discussion today, but it came out in Cape Town as well. It's the cost of the device, and then obviously there's the cost of the program. The health coaches do this because they're passionate about it, but they also need to pay their bills. So there's a cost involved, and just for the IP in the trouble and Gavin pricking his fingers 1,000 times, we need to support him in that. Next slide. All right, so the question that you would like to ask and that we should ask ourselves whenever we do something new is, so what? You had this lovely experiment, you had fun, you saw these wonderful things, but, so what? And this brings me to, how do we start a cardiometabolic revolution? All of us know, whether we want to or not, that obesity is a global pandemic. 900 million people in the world, and that number has probably gone up just as I'm speaking, it's going up, have obesity. In South Africa, 1 in 3 men have obesity or is overweight. Women, close to 70%, are classified as obese or overweight. And there's an interesting, talking about the financial cost and the impact ROI discussion from earlier. We're actually doing some interesting work with an American client who runs like an obesity management program, and looking at the potential savings from managing obesity and its associated cardiometabolic conditions as well. And if you move, and Felicia, she's my partner in crime on this. I'm not going to ask you to, you don't have to come up, don't worry. If you move a patient, and this is in dollars, okay, this is not South African. If you move a patient from a BMI category 3, so that's your very, very obese patients, to a BMI category 2, that's 1 drop, you can save on a per patient per month, Felicia, right? Close to $10,000. Okay, so just in terms of the financial, contribution to obesity management. So we have 3 ways of looking at going forward. We're at a crossroads. We've been there for a while, but we can't follow this ostrich strategy anymore. So the ostrich strategy is you put your head in the ground and you pretend you're not seeing anything. So 3 ways. Number 1, reactive, which we often follow. So you kind of just treat the conditions as they come along. Number 2, we've been playing in that field a little bit. I think first world countries a bit more than we do, is the medical management of obesity. But what we see with that very often, it's a one-size-fits-all kind of scenario. Either everybody gets a GLP-1 or you get the same type of program, the same amount of visits, the same amount of dietitian consultations. Where I believe, and I think most of us can agree on this, is we need to move to a proactive approach. So how do we personalize our preventative strategies? allowing people, empowering people to become CEOs of their own health. Empowered enough that they can make informed decisions to make the correct changes to actually prevent this disaster from getting any worse. Next slide. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we biohack more broadly? If you look under your seats. I would have loved to say that today. But this is not the Oprah Winfrey show. So we have to be pragmatic in the way that we do it. And the way that we do it, if you go to the next slide, is just start where you are. You can go to the next slide. Thanks, guys. Just start where you are. Use what you have in your toolbox and do what you can. And the way that you can think about it is maybe you start only with yourself. Maybe you involve a family member or you involve a friend. Maybe, and Barry's going to challenge everybody after this, maybe you start in your organization, either with your top management or with your employees. Or, and this is blue sky, I realize that, how do you actually identify your high-risk patients? And you actually start engaging them and putting them on a program like this. Then secondly, look at your toolbox. What do you have? And maybe it's very simple. You've got a book today, we gave you a book. And we gave you a pen. So start a diary and write down. And you don't have to do it every single day. Do it for 2 weeks. Just write down what you ate, what you drank, how you exercised, how you slept, how you stressed, and how your body actually responded. Were you tired? Were you energetic? Were you emotional? So being grumpy a certain time of the month is not just for women, okay? Food influences your emotion. So write it down and try and see if there are any patterns that you can identify. Or use these wonderful wearable devices that most of us have. What is your heart rate doing? Monitor that. Engage with the data. Don't just look at your steps. Look at some of the other features. And then use available technology like AI. And I see our data warehouse solution guys, they were here now. I wanted to point them out, but they ran away. I think they thought something was going to happen. But use AI, in terms of interpreting some of the trends that you see, but then just be cognizant of which resources AI is using to provide you with that information. Make sure you understand that. Or in terms of health coaches, there's a lot of work being done now in terms of AI health coaches, and how they can actually support some of these management programs. Then I can't stress enough, partner with like-minded people, because momentum builds momentum. Choose people that's going to pull you in the same direction towards the same goal, and that's the way that you will actually achieve success. And then finally, and it shouldn't have actually been the last number 4 on the slide, it should have been first, don't underestimate the power of education. Start, even if it's something simple like just empowering yourself, teaching yourself, and then applying that to others on how you can confidently distinguish between trustworthy information versus information that somebody's giving you because they want to make a buck. So empower yourself in terms of how to do it. But the point is, just start. And don't wait for Monday. So, start now. I'm going to see what you're eating here. But just start. My mom, she was always on a diet. I remember growing up, I don't know which of you had that experience. She did way less Weight Watchers. The egg diet, the steak diet, you name it. There was a wine diet, I know, I didn't think she followed that one. But the last one, I think, was the cabbage diet. And I think that's what cabbage diet, that broke it for me. And I think that's my origin story. But don't wait for Monday. Start now, because come Monday, you're going to find another excuse. And in a year from now, you would have wished I should have started already. So start where you are, do what you can. It doesn't have to be big. Make small changes for yourself and the people around you. And that's, can we show them the Barbie? That's really very cute. Let me see if I can. If I can't find it, then just Google it, guys. There she is. Here we go. Yeah, amazing. Isn't it amazing? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.